The sun was sinking behind the red cliffs when Luke rode into the valley, his horse coated in dust and sweat after 3 days of travel. He'd been tracking the river west, hoping to find water before nightfall, when the faint sound of laughter reached his ears, soft, melodic, and impossibly out of place in the empty desert. He slowed his horse near a cluster of willows and peered through the brush. What he saw made him forget to breathe. 3 women stood waist-deep in the shimmering lake, their dark hair glistening under the orange glow of sunset. They were tall, graceful, their skin bronze and gleaming with water. Apache, he thought instantly. The stories were true, there were still people living deep in these canyons, far from the white man's towns. He should have turned away, but he didn't. He watched as one of them tossed her hair back, droplets scattering like sparks in the air. The second one lifted her arms, singing something low and rhythmic, while the third laughed, a sound that seemed to stir the leaves around him. Luke swallowed hard, the guilt burning in his chest, but he couldn't look away. Then, suddenly, one of them turned. Her eyes locked directly with his. For a moment, they just stared, he frozen, her unblinking. Then she smiled, slow and knowing. The laughter stopped. The air grew tense. The other 2 turned as well, and Luke felt a chill even under the burning sun. He backed up, heart hammering. His boot snapped a branch, the sound sharp as thunder. Before he could mount his horse, something moved behind him. A shadow, swift, silent. Then another. He turned, and standing there were the same 3 women, no longer in the lake, but wrapped in blankets of woven hide, their wet hair clinging to their shoulders. He hadn't even heard them approach. The tallest, with eyes like polished amber, spoke first. "You saw us," she said calmly, her voice low and ancient, carrying an authority that made Luke feel smaller than he'd ever been. "You watched us bathe in the sacred water." Luke opened his mouth, but no words came. "I didn't mean," he started. The red-haired one cut him off, stepping closer. "You saw what no man should see and live," she said. "Unless he is one of us." Luke's pulse pounded in his ears. "One of you," he echoed. The third woman smiled faintly. "A husband," she whispered. "You saw us bathing in the lake. Now you have to marry us." The way she said it made it sound less like punishment and more like prophecy. Luke blinked, sure he'd misheard. "All of you?" he asked before he could stop himself. Their eyes met, and the tallest one tilted her head. "We are one," she said. "The river binds us, the land feeds us, and now your eyes have marked you as ours." The desert wind picked up, stirring the tall grass. Luke felt something unnatural about the air, like the land itself was listening. He stepped back, gripping the reins of his horse. "Look, I didn't mean any harm. I'll ride on and forget what I saw." The red-haired one shook her head slowly. "No man forgets the lake once he's looked upon it. You carry its reflection now." She touched his chest lightly, and though her fingers were cold, the mark they left behind burned like fire. He flinched, but she only smiled. "You'll feel it grow," she said. "By sunrise, it will cover your heart. And when it does, you'll come back here. You'll have no choice." He leapt onto his horse, spurred it hard, and didn't stop riding until the moon rose. But even miles away, when he finally set camp, the sound of their laughter followed him, soft, echoing through the canyon walls. He poured water into his canteen, trying to steady his breath, but when he looked down, the reflection staring back wasn't his own. 3 faces shimmered in the surface, watching him, smiling faintly. He dropped the canteen, and the water soaked into the dirt, hissing as if it touched hot stone. That night, Luke dreamed of the lake. He saw the women again, dancing under the stars, their feet stirring ripples that turned to silver snakes in the water. The tallest one beckoned to him, whispering words in Apache he couldn't understand. Then her voice turned clear as English, echoing in his head, "The land remembers those who look upon it with desire." When he woke, sweat drenched his body, and his chest burned exactly where she'd touched him. Lifting his shirt, he saw the faint outline of a handprint glowing beneath his skin. Panic surged through him. He tried to scrub it off, but it pulsed brighter, alive. His horse shied away, neighing as if spooked by something unseen. And then, from beyond the firelight, came a soft voice, one he recognized. "You cannot run, Cowboy," it said gently. "The water has already chosen." The 3 women stood at the edge of the darkness, their eyes reflecting the flames, their shadows impossibly long. "You saw us bathing in the lake," the tall one said again, her tone now almost tender. "Now you have to marry us. Before the sun rises, or the curse will bind you forever to the sand." Luke's heart thudded painfully. A curse, he managed to whisper. The red-haired one stepped forward, her voice now almost sorrowful. It's not a curse if you accept it, she said. It's a union, the land, the river, and the man who trespassed. The last who refused turned to stone beneath the cliffs. She pointed toward a distant ridge, and for a moment, Luke thought he saw a shape there, a human figure half buried in rock, its mouth open in eternal scream. The wind grew still, the fire flickered low, and as Luke looked into their eyes, he realized that whatever they were, spirits, witches, or goddesses, they weren't asking for his choice. They were fulfilling destiny. The dawn came crimson and strange, the kind of light that made the whole desert look like it was bleeding. Luke sat by the dying fire, his eyes hollow from sleeplessness. The handprint on his chest had grown darker overnight, no longer glowing but ink black, etched into his skin like a brand. His heart throbbed beneath it, as if something was moving under his ribs, slow and alive. He thought about running again, but his horse was gone. The tracks led back toward the lake. The wind carried the faintest laughter, and he knew. They were calling him. He walked for hours, each step heavier than the last. The mark on his chest pulsed with the rhythm of his footsteps, pulling him forward like a tether. When he reached the canyon's edge, the air shimmered with heat though the morning was cool. The lake below was calm and glassy, reflecting the cliffs and sky perfectly, too perfectly, like a mirror that didn't quite belong in this world. He hesitated at the shore. Then he saw them again. The three Apache women stood waiting, dressed in ceremonial hides adorned with turquoise and bone. Their faces were solemn, their hair braided with feathers. You came, the tallest one said softly. Luke wanted to shout, to demand what they'd done to him, but when he opened his mouth, no words came. The red-haired woman stepped closer, her hand grazing his cheek. You came because you must. The land doesn't take what isn't owed. She pointed to the mark on his chest. The river chose you. You saw us in its sacred hour, when it sleeps between the worlds. Now you belong to it, and to us. Luke took a shaky breath. Your spirits, he said finally. Ghosts, witches, whatever you are, I don't belong to anyone. The third woman, the quiet one with eyes like midnight, smiled faintly. You already do, she whispered. Look at your shadow. He turned, and his blood froze. His shadow wasn't alone, three others intertwined with it, stretching toward the women like black ribbons on the ground. He staggered back, heart pounding. You can't do this to me, he shouted, but the tallest woman only shook her head. The moment you watched us bathe, you took what was forbidden. You bound yourself to the old law. Now you must restore balance. Thunder rumbled, though the sky was clear. The surface of the lake began to ripple, light bending as something ancient stirred beneath. What happens if I refuse? He asked, voice shaking. The red-haired one's expression softened. You'll fade, she said. The desert will drink you. You'll wander as dust until time forgets your name. Luke clenched his fists, glancing at the horizon, the endless, empty land that seemed to hum with unseen energy. He thought about the bones buried beneath this soil, the countless stories whispered by wind and sand. Somehow, deep down, he already knew the truth. There was no refusing this. The women stepped closer, surrounding him in a perfect circle. The tallest raised her hands, chanting words in Apache so old the syllables vibrated in his bones. The air shimmered again, the water glowing faintly blue. Luke felt his pulse slow, his vision blur. The mark on his chest flared like fire. What are you doing to me? He gasped. Binding, the red-haired one said simply. You will walk among men, but your soul will rest with us. The land will never harm you, and the river will always guide you. But you will never leave it. He fell to his knees as the chanting grew louder. Wind whipped through the valley, stirring sand into spirals. The lake boiled with light. Then, silence, utter, crushing silence. When Luke opened his eyes, the women stood over him, no longer translucent but solid, human. They looked different, softer, almost mortal. The tallest knelt and touched his face. It is done, she said. You are one of us now. Luke looked down at his chest. The handprint was gone, replaced by a small turquoise stone embedded just below his collarbone, faintly glowing. He stood slowly, dizzy. What happens now? He asked. The red-haired woman smiled faintly. Now we live, she said. The old ways remember their promises. You'll tend this land, and it will protect you. You'll stay here, our husband, our keeper, our bridge between worlds. The words sank into him like weight. And if I try to leave, he said. The quiet one looked up, her eyes sad. The desert will call you back, she whispered. Every step away will break your breath until you return. You cannot run from what you've become. He wanted to rage, to fight, but when he met their eyes, something in him faltered. They weren't cruel, they were bound by the same curse. Their gazes carried centuries of loss, of waiting for someone who'd never come. Maybe they had once been women, before the land took them. Maybe they were just waiting for someone to break the chain. He swallowed hard, his anger cooling into confusion. Why me? He asked finally. Why now? The tallest woman glanced at the lake, her reflection rippling beside his. Because the land grows weaker, she said. The river's dry, the spirits sleep. We need someone of flesh to keep the balance, someone who still remembers what it means to choose. Luke stared at her, heart hammering. I didn't choose this, he said. She smiled sadly. The land did. The wind sighed through the canyons, carrying the scent of sage and rain. For the first time since he'd come west, Luke felt the heartbeat of the desert beneath his feet, slow, ancient, alive. The women began to walk toward the lake, and though he wanted to resist, his feet moved after them. The red-haired one looked back and extended her hand. You saw us bathing in the lake, she said softly. Now you will. Bathe with us, and the bond will be complete. He hesitated only a moment before taking her hand. The water was cold, like liquid moonlight, and as he stepped into it, the turquoise stone on his chest glowed brighter. The lake shimmered with silver light, swallowing their reflections until there was nothing left but stillness. When the ripples faded, the valley looked empty again, silent, timeless, as if the world had forgotten they were ever there. Yet deep beneath the surface, 3 faint voices echoed in the dark, and one man's heart beat among them, steady, eternal, part of the land forever.